إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله قال الله عز وجل في القرآن المجيد يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون صدق الله العظيم أما بعد. We begin by praising Allah. We praise Him, we thank Him, we ask for His guidance, His help, and we ask Allah for forgiveness for all the mistakes that we've made. We declare that nobody deserves to be worshipped besides Allah. And we declare that Muhammad was the last and final messenger that was sent for our guidance and for the guidance of all humanity until the end of time. Brothers and sisters, recently I received a message that was forwarded to me by some Muslims on WhatsApp. How many of you use WhatsApp, by the way? You're allowed to raise your hands, but you're not allowed to talk during the khutbah, right? Some of you use services like WhatsApp and different, programs, Facebook, social media. Most of you probably at least have an email account. So we send messages back to one another. And someone sent me this message, and they sent it to a lot of my Muslim friends and colleagues. And the message said, basically, that this is a video of a Hindu girl. And the Hindu girl was burnt alive in the Madhya Pradesh region of India because she attended a Christian church. And it showed a video of a woman actually being burnt alive. And of course, we probably shouldn't even watch these videos in the first place, but something didn't seem right about this. So I wanted to verify it. So what happened was, it sounds fairly accurate because it even says what province it's in. And it says, basically there's an agenda saying that she's being persecuted because she practices Christianity in the country of India. And then it goes on to talk about how bad of a place India is. And then it says, we need to send this around. Please send this around. PLS, the please that you do when you're typing. And then it says, this video must go viral. This video must go viral. Now the problem with this video, in addition to the fact that a woman is actually being burned alive in the video, and it's a real video. I mean, this is not an act. This is not an act. This happened. But when you do a quick search on Madhya Pradesh Hindu girl burnt alive, you find several articles. One of them is the Independent newspaper from England, May 2015. It says that there was a woman in Guatemala who was part of a gang who had murdered a taxi driver. And these murders take place. And what happened was, the people of that area, this is the only gang member that they could have captured. The rest ran away. And the way in which they deal with gang members is that they beat them up and they burn them. Sad what happens, but a completely different context. Nothing to do with India, nothing to do with Hinduism, nothing to do with Christianity. Completely different context. What that means is that somebody intentionally took the video, made up a story, forwarded it to people with some agenda that they have in the back of their head or back of their mind, and then they gave the notice that we need to send this to everybody. You need to send this to everyone we know in order to fulfill such and such agenda. Now, this has nothing directly to do with Islam. But the reason why I'm introducing this is because this type of thing goes around the world to different communities, different religions, different people, and Muslims are not immune to the same type of scams, to the same type of misinformation, to the same type of sharing of something that is false. And we need to be careful because we're Muslim. We need to be careful because we're believers. So let me give you something another example of something which was sent around via email, via WhatsApp, via Facebook, via Twitter, via every single social media that you could think of. There was a picture of a sign outside of McDonald's in France. And the sign says, "Our coffee contains French fry grease," in order to speed up the heating process and all of that. And it may be derived from pork lard. We apologize for the inconvenience. So then when someone saw this picture, okay, some Muslims somewhere along the way started going, "We're Muslims. We don't eat pork. But maybe you drink coffee at McDonald's." Like many of the people who pray Fajr at this masjid, they happen to like the McDonald's coffee down the street here. They drink it a lot. So now it's a problem. Say, well, what if there is actually pork lard in there? So what did they do? They started forwarding to all their friends. And it says at the end of the message, "Tell all the Muslims you know," because they need to know if it was true. The problem is, it's not true. This was a sign that was made, looked like it was made on Microsoft Word. They didn't even need to use Photoshop or anything like that. All you need to do is go to a website, right-click on the McDonald's image, save as, copy that image into a Microsoft Word file, type whatever you want, and then take a picture at a window, because it doesn't show anything else, and it makes it look like it's real. This was fake. It was fraudulent. McDonald's was not using pork in their coffee. French fries is a whole nother issue. In their coffee, there was nothing like this. And this is relevant to us because in the Quran we have principles that guide us towards how we're supposed to behave, how we're supposed to react, how we're supposed to respond to things like this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in chapter 49, which is Surah Al-Hujurat, in verse 6, He says, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu," O you who believe, referring to the believers. And whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to the believers, it means you need to pay really close attention because He's going to give you some instructions that are going to help you be a better Muslim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu. If someone who is non-reputable, if someone who is non-credible comes to you with some news, comes to you with some information, فَتَبَيَّنُوا, investigate it, clarify it, make sure it's accurate, verify it, double check it. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us. And then He continues and He says, أَن تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ فَتُصْبِحُوا عَلَى مَا فَعَلْتُمْ نَادِمِينَ. If you don't, then you might affect or harm a group of people out of ignorance, bijahalatin. You don't even realize the effect that you're having. فَتُصْبِحُ عَلَى مَا فَعَلْتُمْ نَادِمِينَ. And then you become regretful over what you've done when you find out the effects of your sharing that information that you did not verify. And this is a very deep verse. And this is a very important verse. When it comes to things which are directly connected with our religion, and even when it comes to things which are not directly connected with our religion. So let's take a look at this verse in detail. It says, "O you who believe, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in." If a fasiq, if someone who is, who's an openly disobeying the commandments of Allah. That's what the term fasiq means, but in this context, it means someone who is not reliable, someone who you cannot verify whether they are someone who you can count on for having accurate information. And the scholars of tafsir, they say this includes the person who is majhulul hal. Majhul means someone we don't know. If you don't know the source of the information, they fall into the same category in the sense that you need to verify, you need to do tabayyanu. You need to make sure whether this person is coming to you with accurate information or not. So the scholars of hadith, they looked at this specific verse in the Quran, and they took this verse and they said, when we're going to relate the Quran, or when we're going to relate a statement from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the science of hadith, There's sahih and da'if and authentic and non-authentic narrations and weak narrations and all of that. They looked at it and they said, what if someone is unknown? Do we consider them to be acceptable, or do we block them out? Do we cancel them out? Scholars of Islam, early Muslims, the teachers of Imam Bukhari, the teachers of Imam Muslim, they said, this person falls in the same category. A fasiq and someone who is majhul, they count as the same. They count as the same, where we need to verify the information that comes from them, because it's so dangerous. And then it says, when it comes from you with information, فَتَبَيَّنُوا, meaning verify it, put some time and effort into seeing whether this information can be counted upon, can be trusted, can be verified. And that's a process. That takes a little bit of effort, it takes a little bit of time. So the first thing we need to learn is we need to be careful of our sources. The second thing we need to learn is that we have a responsibility before we go and share with somebody else to verify. And that takes some time. That takes some effort. And if you don't have the time, and if you don't want to put in the effort, then you shouldn't share. Then you shouldn't pass it along. Why? Because of the harm that will accrue. أَن تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ, that you will harm somebody else because of some rumor that you spread, some false information that you passed on, and you say, but I'm doing it with sincerity. What if you really are trying to help other Muslims? I don't want them to eat something that's prohibited. There was another message that went around that ketchup in South Africa has pork inside of it. What did all the Muslims in South Africa do? Send it to everyone you know, your mother, your brother, your sister, every extended family, but you haven't verified it. And most people will not check, they will not verify, and it will start to spread. And on top of that, what it's going to do, it's done out of sincerity, but it's done out of ignorance. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that specifically in the Quran. And the effects are great. It says that if you do that, you might regret later on what you've done. And this is something that we fail to recognize. It's something that we fail to realize how bad the effects are. You may think, this is not a big deal. So what if we made a mistake? It's not such a big deal. I'm giving this khutbah because I had young Muslims messaging me for the past several months saying, can you please give a khutbah on this topic? Because what bothers us is that when people start spreading around these rumors and this information, it gives us this perception and this idea that Muslims don't verify things very well. Meaning not all Muslims, we're not generalizing here. But some of the Muslims, they're not verifying and they're not checking these things. And therefore, it actually leads us to think that maybe they didn't verify and check the other aspects of their religion. And somehow that starts to cause an intellectual doubt in their mind and in their heart. If you don't understand how it occurs, don't worry. I'm telling you that it occurs. Whether it's justified or unjustified, that doesn't matter. It happens. It affects people's faith and it affects their iman when they see the community doing something like this. Whether right or wrong, the effect is there. So we need to address it. And it's something that we need to seriously think about. So there are some more examples I'll give you. And you may have come across these messages. There's emails that are going around, and they've been going around, these chain mails, for the last 15 years. And all of a sudden, you may get an email in your inbox saying, next week, this store is going to open. And that email is 15 years old. And you think that it just, you read it and you think, oh man, this is happening next week. And one of those emails I've gotten at least 6 times over the last 15 years from people who thought it was fresh, and they're Muslims. One of these emails was that they're building in New York City a building that's shaped like the Kaaba, and it's going to be a bar, and they're going to drink alcohol inside of it. And they're doing this on purpose. It's going to be a bar and a nightclub. Sorry, both. A bar and a nightclub that's shaped like the Kaaba. And they have a picture of it. And if you look around it, it is New York City. You can see the signs. You can see the street names. You can see the cars. You can see the people who look like New Yorkers, whatever they look like, right? And you look at it and you go, this looks very credible. This looks very reliable, and the building looks like the Kaaba. It looks like a building that is shaped exactly like the Kaaba. But this email is 15 years old. And if you know the story behind it, and I've mentioned this a few years ago in another khutbah, the story behind it was, this became an Apple store. Apple computers, you know, this new iPhone just came out, iPhone X and all that. People are going crazy over this. This Apple store, they're usually built in a very unique way. So they wanted to build a square looking thing, like a cubic type building, which is all glass. So while they were building it, Apple's a very secretive company. They like to cover things up and then unveil it, and it comes out magically, looks really nice. So they covered up with black boards the entire thing while they were building the glass on the inside. So it looked like the Kaaba. And then they removed all the black things, and it turned out to be an Apple store that is made of glass, that's cubic, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the nightclub, it has nothing to do with the bar, it had nothing to do with the Kaaba. That's just the style of that Apple store that came out. But the email comes 15 years later to a Muslim who all of a sudden looks at it and their blood starts boiling, sincerely. How dare they do something like this in New York City, that they try to take our Kaaba. See, these people who are at war with Islam, and yes, there are people who are at war with Islam, but these are not the people who are building. It's not Apple Computer, that the one who's doing this, right? So they start getting upset, and they get frustrated, and maybe it ruined their whole day that they're going to build a nightclub and a bar like this that's looking like the Kaaba. But it's not true. It's not true, and it's like 15 years old. And these messages keep on being sent again and again and again. Another one that just came out is that Donald Trump, this is a message, that Donald Trump wants to burn the Quran next Sunday at Trump Towers in his hotel. Now, when you think about it, you go, okay, well, you know, this guy doesn't really like Islam that much. Okay, it seems kind of credible. Maybe he's doing that. And then the message continues, and it goes, let's boycott his products. Okay, and then it says, you need to forward this to as many friends as you can. This says the boycott by Muslims since last month has cost the Trump family $4 billion. And if we continue for 7 months more, it could reach $80 billion. So the more statistics come in, the more numbers and figures come in, it seems like it's more credible. And then comes the final conclusion, and this is what gets a lot of people. It was an emotional appeal. It said, believers, remember that on the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask you, what did you do when they made fun of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How did you come to his defense? And it says, it would only take 15 minutes for you to spread this message to all the Muslims so that we can do this boycott. And that's all you need to do, and that will suffice. But the reality is, this message was fake. And not only was it fake, from the factual perspective, it said that every single product that starts with barcode number 57 is a Donald Trump product. So now people read this message, started going and checking the barcodes, so we're going to boycott this guy's product so that we can stop, so that we can defend Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's where we need to be intelligent. That's where we need to realize that yes, there's sincerity involved. None of us want to stand in front of Allah and be responsible for doing nothing when we know Islam is being made fun of, when we know the Prophet ﷺ is being made fun of. But you know what? By accepting messages like this, Islam gets made fun of even more. And whoever made this, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, whether they're sincere or they're not sincere, they're doing more damage to Islam. So we need to be very careful. So we need to research and we need to check. And one way to check and one way to verify is to go to your search engine, whether it's Google or Yahoo or whatever it is, and take part of the message that you have and put it into the search engine. So if it says 7 months boycott could reach $80 billion, put that in a search engine. See what articles come out. There are websites like Snopes and Break the Chain and many others that investigate these things and find out what the origin is, when it started, what their intention was, and they can tell you what level of authenticity it has. Just like hadith. When we share a hadith, when we share a statement of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we come across similar things. And what we need to do is we need to verify and we need to fact check. So every time there's a seasonal thing, when it comes to Ashura, when it comes to Ramadan, when it comes to things, people share hadith. Say the Prophet ﷺ said such and such thing. If you recite this surah, then this thing is going to happen. And then in the end of the quotes it says, hadith. Hadith. Right? That's not sufficient anymore today to simply just put in between hadith when it matters, when the hadith has a significance. So I'll give you an example. There's a hadith which some of you have heard. The hadith is, in a nutshell, seek knowledge even if you have to go to China. Who's heard that hadith before? Just quick raise of hands. Right, many of you have heard this hadith before. This hadith was classified by hadith scholars to be mawdu', which means fabricated. It is the absolute lowest level of authenticity. But if it was true, and if you spread it, is there any harm that's going to come? Is there anything wrong with seeking knowledge even if you have to travel for it? No. There's nothing wrong with it. But when it comes to something that's actually going to affect people's practice of Islam, it's going to affect their practice of the deen, then they need to be extra cautious. They need to make sure that they're verifying where their information is coming from. And this is a very important point. And the last thing I'm going to mention on this is sometimes information is true and it's accurate, but you shouldn't share it. And one of the messages that goes around to the Muslim community telling them to share is about this fake Quran that was made and is supposedly being distributed in Kuwait and is being distributed in Iraq. So there's a message that comes out that there's this book that was published in 2001. It's a fake copy of the Quran. And then the message continues and it says, Muslims don't realize that this is not the Quran and it's poisoning our children. And we need to make sure that we forward this to as many Muslims as possible so that we can let them know that this fake copy of the Quran is going around. The problem with this is that people don't realize what happens when you start forwarding a message like this. This copy of the Quran, or this supposed book called Furqan al-Haq, which I've had thousands of people keep telling me about it. This is translated by some guy named Anish Shorosh. This is a guy who Sheikh Ahmad Didat in the 80s and 90s used to debate regularly. And he used to destroy him regularly as well. Right? This guy is not very popular. Nobody buys this book. Nobody supports this book. The only way that this book became popular is because Muslims started forwarding it around to all of their friends and family saying, look at this link. This link shows that this guy tried to make some kind of fake Quran and is misguiding Muslims. Brothers and sisters, if somebody cannot tell the difference between the real copy of the Quran and a completely written fake forgery of the Quran, then we have another problem. We have another thing coming. Right? It's not going to poison our children if someone rewrites the Bible in a style that resembles the Quran. That's exactly what he did. So there's no need to forward that because today anybody can make a website. You can go and you can make a website in less than 5 minutes. But the difference is not anyone can promote their website. Most websites will die out of inactivity because nobody wants to go to that page. And by spreading that there's another anti-Islamic website there, there's another anti-Muslim website that showed up, when you spread it, you're actually promoting it. And you're helping people to actually continue doing what they're doing and you're making them popular. So inshallah, the best way to deal with things which may be true and you're sincerely trying to do something, but the counterproductive way is to spread it. Let it die of inactivity and let it die of neglect. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us wisdom, to increase us in knowledge, to increase us in guidance. Ameen. Astaghfirullah li wa lakum wa lisa'ilil muslimin fastaghfiruhu innahu huwal ghafurur rahim. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Today we talked about the importance of verifying information and verifying something before we go and spread it and share it with others. And we talked about the verse in the Quran, How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that, "O you who believe, if someone who is not reliable or you don't know what their status is, if they come to you with some information, you need to verify it before going and telling others about it, because you may harm someone ignorantly without realizing, and then you're going to regret what happened afterwards." All of this that we talked about can be summarized in another statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's an authentic hadith. He said, "Kafa bil mar'i kadhiban an yuhadditha bi kulli ma sami'." He said that it's sufficient to label a person a liar, or it's sufficient to consider something to be a lie when a person shares everything that they hear. Everything that you hear, if you just go and share it, did you hear Muhammad? It looks like Muhammad and Aisha, I think they're going through a divorce. I don't think they're going to be able to reconcile it. And you start going and telling everybody else. Someone comes and tells you, "You know what? I heard that these Doritos, which has cheese in it, there's pork inside, so therefore we're not allowed to have it. I heard that this medicine, it has alcohol in it, and looks, it says alcohol in it, we cannot eat this medicine, or we cannot have this bread, or we cannot have this ice cream, or we cannot have this." If you don't verify things, then this Prophet ﷺ is saying, is if you share everything that you hear without knowledge, without understanding, or without trying to verify it, then it's considered to be, that statement that you share is considered to be sufficient as being labeled a lie, because it's so widespread, because it's so prevalent. So we have to be careful of this tongue, and we have to make sure that we're cautious. Sometimes we're doing it out of sincerity, but we need to be careful. Alhamdulillah, we provide resources. There's many resources out there. Even this masjid has many resources. Whenever there's a season that comes up, whether it's Halloween or Christmas or Ashura or Ramadan or Shawwal or so many other things, we send out messages giving people guidance on how they should be celebrating or what they should be doing during that time. How many of you are on our mailing list? Just a real quick show of hands, right? So we need more people, definitely. There's a responsibility on everyone. And the responsibility is, there is knowledge out there. And one of the most common things I hear is, "Well, how are we supposed to learn?" There's knowledge out there. There's knowledge at the masjid. There's knowledge at our university next door. There's newsletters that go out. There's websites. There's articles that are put on our website. But everyone needs to understand their own capacity and understand their own personal responsibility, that the knowledge is not always just going to come to you. You can't just open your mouth and hope that it's going to be spoon-fed for you. You need to put a little bit of effort by either asking someone who has knowledge, or trying to do a quick search, or going to a website or something like that, to understand the same way that we need to fact check things to make sure that they're accurate. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for our shortcomings. Oh Allah, help us and guide us at all times. Oh Allah, forgive those people who are suffering and who have passed away. Oh Allah, help those people who are going through difficulties. Oh Allah, help us to increase in our knowledge and in our wisdom and in our understanding of how we should be applying Islam in the modern age today. Oh Allah, grant us a depth of understanding so that we can do only that which will please you, and keep us away from doing anything which would displease you. Oh Allah, help us and guide us at all times and in all things we do. Ameen. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Few quick announcements. We have Friday Family Night program tonight. Dr. Imad Ba'youn is going to be doing the tafsir of Surah Ibrahim. We also have the change of time. So if you're one of the ones who didn't hear about the change of time, 12 o'clock is the first Jummah, 1 o'clock is the second Jummah. Because of the time change, we change the times of the khutbah. The last thing is that in case of emergency, if there was ever an emergency that happened in this masjid at Jummah time, you should make yourself a little bit aware of what is the nearest exit. There's an exit back there, there's an emergency exit over there, there's an exit this way, there's exits this way. In case something were to happen, fire, earthquake, whatever it may be, what you want to make sure is you leave peacefully, calmly, don't panic, but you leave quickly. What you don't do is, if you're back here, don't go to grab your shoes over there and then try to exit back through this door or exit from there. Exit from the first door. Right now, we're actually trying to set up some emergency training, and we're in collaboration with some of these people who can organize that, and we'll give further instructions. But it's important for us to know, in case of emergency, we should understand what the protocol is. So that's just a little taste, a hint of what's coming soon, and we'll explain it in more detail. Waqimus salah.